All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. And for my guest today, I have none other than Lezlie from the Nerdy Narrative. Hello, Lezlie. It's so lovely to
Hey,
see you.
Philip.
So lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, actually. It's beautiful weather here. We have
Ah,
a break in the heat, a nice breeze. So, anybody that's in Orlando right now at Disney is having a great time with this weather. We've been enjoying taking a little bit longer walks with the pups. It's
oh,
the kind of weather that just makes you happy. It makes you feel good to be outside. So, I like when I
oh.
can enjoy being out there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So here in New Jersey, it for quite a few
Oh,
days, it had been rainy and gloomy and cold. And just today, it got really nice and sunny. I had a great time playing tennis already this morning. So,
oh man. We have
so,
a couple of tennis courts in our community and they're
oh,
always full. They're always full. Yeah, we have a really Florida is really neat in how they build now. They really build self-contained
yeah,
communities. You have when you first enter in the community, you've got apartments that goes into condos, that goes into townhouses, and then you get into houses. There's a fitness trail with little where you can like pop off and do different types of things. They've got pull-up bars, they've got
nice.
all this stuff. They've got tennis courts, they have a baseball field, they've got volleyball, they've got a full-size playground right across the street. You've got grocery stores, 20 dentist office, like
Wow.
everything. So you don't have to venture far to take care, which for somebody like me, I am not. It takes a lot to get me out of the house.
Where a lot of
So
us are that way. Yeah. Yeah.
so the fact that it's very contained, because I like kind of cozy small places,
Yeah.
and so it really fits for me being here, especially with we have what I call endless summer. I
Yeah.
feel like my attitude is solar powered. So with as much sunshine as we get, I feel like I'm just happy all the time. Except I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3 last night and I'm still a little depressed over that. So
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
uh, be
Yeah.
prepared if you're an animal lover,
Oh, oh no.
just yeah, just get ready. I don't think there's any way to really be prepared for it, but
Yeah.
I just came home. I was like hugging my pups, and they were like, "Okay,
Oh,
we're glad to see you too, but
what's the matter?
we need some personal space, Mom. You're getting a little, you know."
Yeah, oh my goodness. Well, Florida's, yeah, it's a beautiful place. I know tennis, by the way, is huge in Florida. Not only do you have the Miami Open there, which is a major
Hmm.
tournament, but you have tons of tennis academies and a lot of tennis stars, wherever they're from, live in Florida. And
Yep.
not just American ones, but people from all over the world
Hmm.
who are tennis professionals
Hmm.
will live in Florida. So, but yeah,
That's
so
that's one thing I like about this area is it's a melting pot.
yeah, oh
There
yeah,
are so many different types of people and from different countries. It's wonderful. I love just the diversity of just the conversations and surroundings because I'm Southern and we talk to everybody.
uh-huh.
So if I ever go somewhere I'm having to wait in line or anything like that, I'm going to strike up a conversation with whoever is in line with me. And so I've had some really fun conversations with different people, learned a lot of different things, and it's
Yeah.
I love it. I personally have been thriving here. So
Well, it's kind of what we do on BookTube, isn't it? You know, we
mhm.
talk to people, get to know them, and be friendly, and of course, it's usually over books, but it can be of anything at all, and that's one of the great things about this space. And I'm so glad that I get to meet people like you. You and I have been in a conversation before on my
Mhm.
channel. That was quite some time ago. It's been a while, but
Yeah, I think
you
it's
and
been a couple
Joanna
years.
and Sun joined me
Yes.
for our top five favorite fantasy reads
Mhm.
video, which was a lot of fun to do.
Mhm.
So I'm so glad I have the chance to talk to you again. And one thing I'd love for you to do, if you don't mind, is to give my viewers, and a lot of them already know who you are.
Yeah, same.
a lot of them know who you are, but I'm sure maybe there are some who don't yet. So tell us a little bit about your channel, if you don't mind, what you do there, because I know you do a lot. You do a lot on your channel, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. And so just give us a sense of what you tend to do and what are your upcoming projects, perhaps?
Well, I like to read. I call myself the Mikey of BookTube. And for those of you who might be younger, back when Philip and I were youngsters, there was this kid. His name was Mikey, and
Mikey.
it was a cereal commercial where Mikey eats everything, and they were promoting a certain type of cereal, and the other kids didn't want to eat it, and so they
Wasn't it
make Mikey
Chex?
eat it first. I think it was Chex. It was either
Yeah.
Chex or Life.
Yeah.
And so the little slogan was Mikey eats everything. And so I call myself the Mikey of BookTube. I read everything. Well, there are a few subgenres that I typically stay away from, but for the most part, I would say the ones that I spend the most time in are fantasy, science fiction, horror. I love thrillers, mystery, and I recently, for a secret project I'm working on, I read a contemporary romance.
Oh, okay.
Not I would have never picked it up if not for this project, and I loved it. I
Aha.
absolutely loved it. The author happened to have a new release come out. I've already put a hold on it at the library. I
Ah.
have to, yeah, that was a surprise to me, which is one thing I love about BookTube.
Mm,
For as far as watching, I like to watch channels that don't always read the same things as me to
yeah.
just get exposed to different types, because sometimes I might think I won't like a particular genre, and like the Codex Cantina is one that
Oh, they're
taught me
great.
to try
Yeah.
more classical literature, and some of my favorite reads and authors have come from that genre. Now, I would say most of the ones I really clicked with were more modern classics like Zora Neale Hurston, but it was the people on the channel that I liked first. And when I got a feel for them, I then got a feel for, okay, this particular thing they covered might click with me. And that's how I picked up this contemporary romance. So now I'm into that. I'm gonna read more.
All right.
I just and I also like to vary my reading so that I don't get bored. Reading is my most favorite thing in the world to do. It's habit, it's routine, it's comforting to me.
Yeah.
And in order for it to not get boring, I like to vary up, just alternate my genres that I'm reading out of. And because I'm a creature of habit and routine, I am drawn by the same tropes. A lot of people sometimes will ding a book in a review, perhaps because they're like, "Oh, I've read this trope 20 times." Yeah, I've read it 20 times. I'm going to read it 100 more times. I like it. I love it, and a lot of authors are really creative with how they can work with that trope.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be anything just overwhelmingly different or unique. If you just, put a little bit of a twist on it, make me fall in love with a character, and then perhaps that character changes and I, love that character even more. And then maybe you show me the character's true nature, and I'm at war with myself because now I'm like, I don't like this character anymore. How did I love
Mm.
this character all throughout, and all of a sudden you've changed it? Why would you do that to me? And I'm mad, but also loving it at the same time,
Yeah.
because when you evoke that type of emotion in me where I am at war with myself over a fictional character. There was one I read recently. I literally argued with myself the entire day before I could write the review, because I'm like, I'm
Oh,
so mad the author did this to me. But at the same time, I'm like, but it's genius. It worked with the story. And just to, I'm 46. I've been reading for 40 years and I read a lot. I've always read a ton. I've always had 2 to 3 books at my disposal. And to read so many books and to still come across authors who can just really have me just in knots and still thinking about a book days, weeks, months later,
yeah.
I, I, I and they thank me for writing a review and reading their book, and I'm like, no, thank you. Like, they don't understand. Like, even it's like authors are my celebrities.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'm not big into. I do watch a little TV, and if I happen to meet Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics, I would die. But for the most part, authors are my celebrities, and it's just starting this BookTube channel. I would have never imagined getting to meet a lot of you and also authors and have them, like, if you ever want to, work together, and I'm getting advanced reader copy of these books. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel lucky to be alive. Like, every day I feel lucky to be alive, and it's this is the best.
I think we
It
all feel
really
that
is.
way. It's a wonderful space, and sometimes we have a little bit of friction over the different roles. And for myself, I'm now a published author, a self-published author, and I'm also a booktuber. I'm also a teacher, and sometimes you have to put lines between those roles, and
Yeah.
sometimes they for me, most of the time, they actually just sort of blend into each other, because what I do in the classroom, what I do as a writer, what I do here as a fan of literature, all of these things, for me, they inform each other, and it's really hard for
Hmm.
me to separate those things. So
Hmm.
it's a wonderful thing to me, but I think it's important to be aware. And, like, for example, I've been refraining from leaving comments on people's reviews of The Way of Adan, because
Yeah.
I want to give them, that space. And if people want to make comments who have watched the video, I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable doing that. So
Yeah.
I've been,
Yeah.
that's just, a lot of people are like, it's fine if you want to leave a comment, and
And
then,
I'm one of those people. Like,
yeah,
I've never understood that. Like, my take on that whole thing is, I read the book. I left a written review.
right.
I will sometimes do video reviews as well, dedicated reviews. I definitely talk about them on my weekly reading wrap ups. My review is for everybody on planet Earth with access to the internet. I
Yeah,
I do not mind, as and if an author wants to talk to me about it, I'm more than happy to, because a lot of times I'm reading books that I read a lot of books that are just not widely known or popular. And a lot of times the only person I can talk to at length is the author. And I'm just
yeah,
overjoyed if they're willing to talk to me. And I've had a few say they'll message me privately, and they're like, let me know if this is weird, but I just want to thank you for reading my novel. I liked what you said about, they usually, just like when I read a synopsis, there's usually one line or phrase that stands out to me that makes me want to read that book.
yeah,
There's a line in my review that struck a chord with them, maybe what the heart of the story was. And like,
yeah,
I just really liked how you said this. And it opens up the conversation. And they're perfectly fine. Now, if they were like getting on there and attacking what other people said,
right.
that's
Which
completely different.
I've
I've
actually
never
never
had that
seen that.
happen.
Yeah, I've never
Yeah, I've
seen that.
never had that happen.
Yeah, yeah,
I've I have only ever had positive
yeah.
communication with authors. Now, I've had some that I would give them really great reviews, and then maybe there would be one book I read that I didn't like, and then they would just never talk to me again if I didn't
Oh,
like a book. And I've never thought I've been like ugly about a book I didn't like, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sometimes it's just how they
I will
take it.
say that it is. Oh, sorry. Just I was going to say, it is really gratifying when a reviewer kind of nails it and says something that makes you feel like, oh, I've been understood here. I actually, this happened. I succeeded in getting this thing across, and it feels fantastic. And I'm sure you've heard that from authors who've commented
Yes,
on your reviews, right?
there is no better feeling on this earth than for an author to say, I'm so glad that you got it.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I was trying to do with this. And I'm
yeah,
also one of those readers that, after the fact, I do want to know the author's intent. I don't want to know it beforehand. I want to get my own, just gauge it for myself, see what I pull out of it. And then after that, I'm always going to the author's notes to see, okay, what were they, what was the heart of the story? What was the theme? And who got me started on that was Stephen Graham Jones. That's who
Ah.
hooked me into reading it, because he's a literary horror author, and I wanted to know, because sometimes I miss things. If you're just kind of lightly interspersing a theme that you're wanting to draw attention to,
Mhm.
I might miss it, because sometimes I get hyper focused on a particular, like, I love this character, and
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care about the other characters as much. I don't pay them as much attention. I want to get back to this other character, and I'll sometimes miss things. But I love knowing the author's intent, and
Yeah.
just that's when I go and research an author, is usually after I've read a piece of their work.
So you don't subscribe to the extreme interpretation of the author is dead. Yeah.
No, and that could be because of my age. When I got into reading, we didn't have the internet. We
Mm.
didn't vet authors, and we didn't know who they were. And I never did that. So I've not gotten into the habit now. Now, if something was glaringly obvious about someone, for me, it's a personal thing. And I try, I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media for
Uh-huh.
lots of reasons. One of them being I would rather read a book. But
Yeah.
I spend a few minutes, I limit myself. And if I happen to see an author do something that I personally think is just really ugly, I just I don't follow them on social anymore.
Uh-huh.
I follow people that post stuff that give me joy, that make me happy.
Yeah.
And if you do something really ugly, then I personally may choose to not follow you, and I may not read any more of your work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't go digging into. There are a lot of times that I don't know the author's race, gender, preferences, nothing. None of that matters. The
Yeah.
story is what I'm there for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what if you hear an author say, "Oh, well, I didn't intend that. Actually, I intended this." Does that
I don't
influence
care.
how you
I
interpret, or you?
Nope.
No. Okay. Okay.
Nope, because it while I like to know that, that
Yeah.
has no bearing on me, because I'm one of these weird people, and you'll have to tell me if you've ever had this happen to you. But I'll read a book, and if I love that book, however many long years later, I'll reread that book.
Uh-huh.
And depending on what's happened to me in my life and whose shoes I have walked in,
Yeah.
I might react to a different character differently, with more compassion and
Very
grace,
true.
because now I've experienced something where I walked a mile in that person's shoes, and I'm like going, I understand your I got your motivations now. I see what
Yeah.
drives you. I see why this would have hurt you in this story, and I just relate differently.
Yeah.
And so, it I may not get the author's intent right away. I might get it on a reread, but to me it's I'm looking for what's in it for me. What am I going to pull out of this?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
there are a lot of authors who have taught me through fictional characters some very important lessons. I mean, I hope
Yeah.
people think Leslie's a good person. Leslie would not ever hurt anybody,
I
not on
think there's a pretty
purpose.
good consensus on
But
that.
but I know that I just I know that I can still be better. I know that I can learn to be better. And
Hmm.
hey, if I can learn that from fictional characters, yes, I mean, it's just I love
Yeah.
books. I've learned so much about books. It's funny, because I used to would encounter people when I was younger that were older than me, and they're like, "Wow, you're smart. Where did you learn that?" And I'm like, "I read it in a book."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
you expand your vocabulary, and I think it keeps me sharp. Now, reading these mysteries and thrillers, do I ever solve the mystery? Extremely rarely do I solve it. But I
Yeah.
have fun trying. I mean, I take notes. I'm like, I am determined I'm going to solve this before the twist at the end of the book.
Yeah.
No, that never
No?
happens.
Okay.
I am
Well,
terrible at it. I fall for all of the red herrings, all the misdirections. I'll fall for all of it.
Well, maybe you're like me, you're more of a forest than a tree person, right? Is
I
that
think so.
yeah, yeah. So you just have good a sense for the big picture. That's all, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we miss those details a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so that's so much fun. And I think you also do manga on you've done manga
I
on your
do. I
channel as well,
do.
right? Yeah.
I do. I love manga. I love anime. I've also gotten into comics, but I still like manga a little bit more, I do
Uh-huh.
believe.
Okay.
I've been hunting lately. Majority of the manga I've been reading is the newer Junji Ito stuff, but I think I want to look into a few others that I've seen around. I want to finish Spy Family. I actually got to read the arc for the very first one and
Wow.
review it, gosh, like 3 or 4 years ago now. And so I want to get back into that one and get that one finished. But yeah, I've always been a huge fan of manga. It's funny because I used to watch anime. I had no idea it came from manga.
Oh, okay. And how
So that was
interesting.
fun. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm a sort of a baby in manga myself. Although I grew up on comics, so it's interesting. I've felt now that I've started to read some manga that it's a really good fit for me because
Mm-hmm.
I know there are differences between American comics and manga, but I love the visual way of telling stories, and
Mm-hmm.
I love the art. And so far, I've read two. I'm just about finished with the second. I did Vinland Saga
Yeah,
and
I've
also
been watching this.
Vagabond, and really had the tremendous opportunity to chat about them with Murphy Napier, and
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed every single discussion tremendously.
I think
And
my favorite things about those are the thumbnails.
probably I have a little too much fun with the thumbnails too.
They're so
Yeah.
great. They're so great. I can't remember. I was in a conversation with some booktubers somewhere, and we got on the subject of your thumbnail game.
Oh
So,
no. Yeah, well, I kind of went from the worst thumbnails on YouTube to having fun with them. So, yeah, my older thumbnails were pretty boring, and then I
oh,
enlisted.
we're not going to
Yeah,
talk about mine.
yeah,
We
yeah,
won't get into that.
yeah. But I enlisted the help of my younger daughter to, basically I hired her to make thumbnails for
Yeah,
me for a
that's
while.
great. Oh,
And then
that's
I
awesome.
think she got bored with it. And so basically she just taught me how to do it. And I've been doing them all on my own since.
Yeah.
But she sometimes will look at one of my thumbnails and say, yeah, you got the hang of that, Dad. Yeah, you know?
But manga, I think what attracts me, appeals to me more manga over comics. I like
Yeah.
the simplicity of them.
Uh-huh.
Comics can get very busy, very detailed, not knocking on that artistic work at all, but I get
Uh-huh.
distracted because I'm looking at everything going on and studying it and admiring and the color that I sometimes lose focus on the story. And
Uh,
mangas, though, at least the manga I've read has been a little more simplistic in nature.
hmm.
And you're focused more on the expression of the characters. And
Yeah.
well, besides Junji Ito, a lot of what I've read has been hilarious, like One Piece and Full
Yeah.
Metal Alchemist, Inuyasha. Those are all just really hilarious, and it brings the focus more to the character's expression. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've got to get back into it.
So the humor is a big component in manga then. It's and
Yep.
often with these stories like there was humor in Vinland Saga for sure. There's been bits of it here and there in Vagabond, and those are important moments in storytelling, especially if you're dealing with a story with a lot of violence, a lot of trauma, a
Hmm.
lot of tough things. I think it's important to have some humor in there once in a while, isn't it?
Oh yeah, a well placed just one liner to me is just everything. T. Kingfisher has it nailed.
Huh.
It doesn't matter if she's writing one of her horror books or one of her fantasy books, she just has some very well placed, quick witted one liners or a couple lines of banter between characters that just it's a beautiful thing. I wish I could, oh man, I wish I could pull something like that off.
Yeah, yeah, it's a gift for sure. Well,
Mhm.
this is great. I think you've given us a pretty good sense of what you do on your channel
Everything.
and everything, which is great, from fantasy all the way to manga to more literary works. And I know that you have a great relationship with Codex Cantina, and
Mhm.
I love them because they cover stuff that typically I teach. So I will see what they're covering. I'm like, oh yeah, I taught that short
Mhm.
story, or yeah, that poem, I know that one. And so that's one of the few channels that I'm in touch with at all that does stuff that I often do in the classroom, which is what I don't do here. I stick to
Yeah.
fantasy for YouTube, but I do appreciate what they do there a lot.
Mm.
But I would like to transition now, if you don't mind, into
Mhm.
discussing, since we know what you do now, how about how did you get here? And so we're going to go with the standard question here on Dear Dr. Fantasy, which is going on the premise that you are what you read, Lezlie. What are some of the important reads that you've engaged with, some of the stories that have informed who you are over the years, going all the way back to little Lezlie, you know, and
Wow.
as far back as you want to go, and go wherever you wish.
My goodness. I the very first book that I received was on the day that I was born from my aunt, and I still have it. It's a little book called Little Girls. So I guess my aunt had no idea what she was doing. She
Wow.
made sure the day I was born I was going to be a bookworm, but my
Wow.
birth mother actually when I started reading, I for some reason I was reading everything I could get my hands on. I was trying to read the newspaper. And so she just started putting books in my hands. And she started collecting for me the Sweet Valley High books.
Okay.
And before that, I'm trying to remember, I had, of course, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys. I'm can't remember my grade school books as much. That's been a long time ago. Just I know I had a ton of the little golden books, like the Little
Oh,
Puppy, the
yes, the little golden
Berenstain
books.
Bears,
Yeah.
just all of those. And she would get me coloring books that also told stories. And I mean, it's just wow. And I'm sure those are still in a box somewhere that I don't have access to, but I was a big mystery fiend
Okay.
until, well, I got in high school. One of my friends got me into Harlequin romance books, and I was
Okay.
reading those like crazy, and I loved them because I had no idea how actual real relationships and love work. I didn't have like my first real boyfriend, I was 23. So
Oh,
all of
okay.
those books I was reading in high school, I just thought that was how it worked. Once I actually got into an actual boyfriend girlfriend, I was like, yeah, this is not how it works. But
Oh no. Oh my goodness, that poor whoever that was trying to live up to
yeah,
a Harlequin romance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 3 months it worked, and then I was like, this is this. Yeah. So my best friend's brother, I
Yeah.
was over there hanging out one night, and he put a book in my hands, and he said, "Try this," and I actually still have it. It was the mass market paperback of The Eye of the World.
Oh,
It
no
was
kidding.
it
Okay.
was mid 90s. I think maybe 3 of the series were out at that point. He
Yeah.
put that
Yeah.
book in my hands, and like I said, I still have it, so he never got that book back.
Uh-oh.
And that was my very first fantasy read. Now, during junior high and high school, I did go through a Stephen King phase where I was reading all of his stuff and Dean Koontz, but this was the first legitimate fantasy story, and I never looked back. I started making my way through the series. I was getting the books as they came out, and that was my gateway to fantasy. And
Wow.
I started consuming, I read all of the books that were out in the Wheel of Time and got caught up. Then I started reading A Song of Ice and Fire. Then I got into the Sword
Wow.
of Truth series.
Yep.
I got, of course, the Lord of the Rings. I got into those. And
Yeah.
I mean, I even went back and started reading younger fantasy novels, the C.S. Lewis, the Chronicles of Narnia. I went back and read those. There
Huh.
was another children's fantasy series that I read. I'm blanking on which one it was.
Okay.
And just I've never ever let go of fantasy ever again. There's always 1 to 2 fantasy reads going on in my life. Like I alternate the other ones through other genres, but fantasy is a constant placeholder. So that's definitely the favorite of all genres.
So Wheel of
To me.
Time was the one that really got it all rolling, and
Yeah.
I wish I had started that. I didn't start Wheel of Time until, and I'm older than you are, but I was in college by the time I think the first book came out in 1990. I think it was The Eye
Hmm.
of the World. I didn't actually read them until after Robert Jordan passed away. He passed away in 2007, I think, somewhere around there. So it must have been a year or two later, at least, because I started and was able to read and then finish right when the last book came out, which Brandon Sanderson, of course,
Hmm.
wrote. So that was I probably started a couple years after Robert Jordan passed away. And then, so it's a series that I often wish I had started when I was younger.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I had a good time reading it, and I felt connected to it. And it was at a time when I was trying to expand my fantasy reading.
Mhm.
But it's not your favorite series, I think, is it? Wheel of Time?
It it oh, if you had asked me before recent years,
Uh-huh.
I would have said it would have been in my top 3.
Okay.
I actually like of I mean, I love A Song of Ice and Fire over Wheel of Time. I
Okay.
also love the Sword of Truth series over Wheel of Time. I
Oh,
mean,
you
I
do?
love
Okay.
Wheel of Time, but it is not my favorite fantasy series. I honestly I don't think I could narrow it down
That's
to
hard.
one because there's been so many. And if I were to read a Wheel of Time, if I were to read Wheel of Time, if I started that now, I
Yeah.
don't think I would like it.
Oh, really?
I'm
Yeah.
rereading it right now, and of course, it's full of nostalgia. It takes me
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
where I was in my life when I read the book for the first time. All the many, I mean, I've read the series a ton of times, and
Yeah.
it's nostalgia. And it's because I know what Robert Jordan does over the series,
Yeah.
and I know what the payoff is. If I was
Hmm.
reading it for the first time now, I'd be going, oh my word, this guy takes 30 pages to say something.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of made a joke with Kate. She and I we're both. I'm listening to the audiobooks with the physical books for the first time. I've never listened to the audiobooks of Wheel of Time, and I was joking with her. I was like, "Wow, I could space out for however long, and when I come back and dial back in, Jordan is still going to be talking about whatever he was 20
Yeah.
minutes ago when I spaced out." So it's a kind of a joke, and then he's really good at making sure he kind of repeats things a lot. So if you
Yes.
miss it, you're gonna get it the 15th time he says it.
Which would be nice, I guess, if you were reading it where you were waiting for the next book and you had to, a
And
certain
I
amount of
was
time passed.
then.
That was you, yeah. So
Yeah.
that wasn't me because I got to read the series bang, 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 really
Yeah, and
fast. But
yeah, and that's something I haven't enjoyed doing a reread where we're doing a book a month
huh,
is it's just a whole lot of repetition. Now, book 4, it kind of dialed back a little bit on that,
yeah,
and 5 a little bit, and I'm just glad that I'm to where these kids have started maturing a little bit because
uh-huh.
I and it didn't matter. Even though I started reading the series as a teenager, the Two Rivers kids got on my nerves then
Oh,
too.
really?
So
Okay, yeah,
yeah, but I was a little bit of an odd duck as a teen myself. But I just
yeah.
picking a favorite fantasy series, I just don't know that I could pick one.
It's hard.
I
I hate
mean,
making these top 10 videos and things like that. And it's just so but
me
Wheel of
too.
Time is a series that I really enjoyed reading it, even though I was in my 40s when I read it, I think. Um early 40s perhaps. But anyway, I thought there were some great things about it. There are aspects of Jordan's writing that I really admire. It can be very poetic sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I love the different sword forms are almost like a haiku or something, the way he describes them.
Well,
Um,
just the depth of his creativity
Oh, it's such great
of
world building.
creating
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world building.
Yeah.
You know this entire world. You know all he just built all of these cultures.
Incredible. Yeah.
Just each one has a different form of the prophecy and how it's interpreted. You
Yeah.
have this magic system, all of these magical items, and it's just you're like going, when are we going to get to the bottom of the barrel as to what this author can create? And that just, yeah, I would never be able. I'm not an author. I don't want to write. I've never aspired to become an author.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't do it anyway. My brain just does not work where I can come up with an idea and then just, oh, well, here's how I can write this book.
Mm.
And I just love reading too much. But my goodness, when you have an author that is able to just blow your mind and just keep expanding, and it just, it never, it is, and it's good. It's good. It's not just, well, let me throw in this. And it's not just one new trick per book. And that's just, I've always been fascinated with just these magical items, what they do. And I'm like, how did you come up with all of this?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. It's really incredible the amount of
mm-hmm.
world building that Robert Jordan put into that series. And I'm so glad that Sanderson finished it for us and did, I think, a great job. I
Mm-hmm.
never felt when I was reading the last three books there was some, discontinuity or anything. I thought Sanderson did a really good job of keeping me, feeling immersed in that world, and was very invested in the ending. So,
I've always felt that Sanderson, because I think he'd only written one book when he began reading The Wheel of Time.
oh, only
And
one. Wow. Okay.
he was so taken in by it and
Yeah.
he loved it. And I kind of feel that he is very reminiscent to me of Robert Jordan, but not as repetitious. And
Uh-huh.
just maybe I feel like is a little bit more simplified with
Yes, I
the
agree
way he
with
tells
that.
his story,
Yeah.
which I like because sometimes I might read a really dense science fiction novel, horror story, or maybe a complex grimdark fantasy novel.
Hmm.
I need something that I can just easily follow.
Sure.
I need a book that holds my hand. You know,
Yeah.
if I'm not in that headspace, that's when I'm going to go to somebody. Like if I want a puzzle and I want to have a really good time just reading one chapter per day and puzzling over it, then that's when I'm going to pick up a Malazan book. You know, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I don't mind when if an author is, you know, I hope they don't ever feel bad. I'm like, I like the simplistic form of storytelling
Right.
or breaking up a complex read. I'm not. I hope they're not taking that as a slight. No,
No.
I
Yeah.
like how I know how you write. I know where to put your work and what I'm doing so that I'm going to have the best reading experience possible.
Right.
I think that's key for readers to avoid slumps or getting tired of a favorite genre. I
Yep.
think it's key to know your, okay, this is the kind of author that's going to write this type of story, and just know yourself like, wow, I had a really tough week at work last week.
Mm.
I need candy. You know,
Yeah.
that's when I'm
Yeah.
going to pick up a Dresden novel. Like, my husband is listening to the audiobooks of Dresden. He didn't tell me, and he forgot that he had it playing on his phone when we got in the truck to go somewhere last week. I literally
Uh-oh.
heard two lines and I was like, oh, this is the part where a certain character drank the wrong potion. He started laughing. He goes, yeah, I didn't want to tell you. I started listening to the series. And
Aw.
so,
That's so,
yeah.
I just have to tell you that I love your attitude, because it saddens me when someone comes across, I'm sure you've had viewers like this too, and I don't think they mean to be disparaging necessarily, but often I get the impression that some people seem to think that if you like Sanderson, you can't like Steven Erikson, or if you like Steven Erikson, you can't like Sanderson. And it just seems like, wait, why are we fighting here? We're all the same genre. It's okay to have
Yeah.
a writer like Erikson who definitely weaves themes very deliberately into his writing and explores them deeply, and has much more range to his prose, and can be challenging because of that. Often you're
I
having
just
to use more parts of your brain, I think, when you're reading Malazan. And then
sort of,
yeah.
sort of. What I like about Erickson's writing is I
Mm-hmm.
can relax.
Yeah.
I know he's going to drop me in the middle of the fray,
Mm-hmm.
and I trust that somewhere, like I think in my review I called it a tapestry. All of these
Ah, yes, you
threads
did.
of
I
all these
remember that.
characters
Yeah.
just weave together, and by the end it
Yeah.
was a masterpiece. You saw the whole picture of what was going on from the first page, and
Yeah.
it was absolutely stunning. And
Yeah.
I loved that. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. That's okay. I'm just gonna enjoy. And he wrote some seriously interesting characters where I sometimes I'd get drawn to one or two characters, and those are the ones I'm invested in.
Mm-hmm.
And when it changes points of view and things like that, I'm a little disappointed. But with Erickson, he made so many interesting characters that
Yeah.
I didn't mind when I was switching between points of view, because I was like, okay, well, let's go back and see what this one's doing. Because when we left this little guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
he was getting up to some evil.
Yeah.
So,
But he's definitely an author who tends not to hold your hand, and
right. And
which
I
I
appreciate
love.
that.
I
Mhm.
love. But then, like you, sometimes I'm in the mood for something that just is like a popcorn read, and so
Mhm.
I'll pick up a Dresden book or something, and I love it. It's entertaining. Why can't we have both of those things, and celebrate them, because they're great for what they do, right?
Mhm. And it's
So I
okay if a favorite author writes a book that you don't connect with.
yeah.
Like I didn't like Stephen King's fairy tale.
Huh. Uh-oh.
I love 20 other books I read by him, and I'm
Yeah.
still going to get Holly when it comes out in September. It's like I'm not gonna stop reading Stephen King because I didn't like
Yeah.
one of his books. Like it's like
But
you have a favorite restaurant.
yep.
And if you go there very often, at some point, there's going to be a night where you either have poor service or maybe the food just wasn't up to snuff. You're not going to not go back. You know
Yeah.
that it was just an off night. And, there's just like, I'm still mad at Jim Butcher over Battleground.
Uh-oh. I haven't gotten
He's
that
got a
far
lot
yet.
to
Yeah.
do. He's got a lot to do in this next book to make it
Uh-oh.
nice. He had a short story that sort of smoothed it over a little bit. I'm like,
Okay.
okay, if you continue down this, I might forgive you, maybe.
Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet in Dresden. I'm only 6 books in now. So yeah.
Oh,
Book seven, a
oh,
lot of people give a lot of praise to. So, yeah. Um,
it's just a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. That's a favorite. Death Mask is a top favorite. That's book 5.
Yes. Yes. I liked book 5.
Loved,
People
loved
warned
that
me
one.
that I wouldn't like book 6, and I actually was fine with it.
Yeah,
It was interesting because a lot of
it's
the fans who've been very helpful all along
yeah.
were like, well, book six is a drop, in quality, so just be warned. And I was like, okay. And I
No,
had low expectations for book 6, and I ended up being actually pretty good with it.
I think the reason why they're saying it from hindsight, because book
Uh-huh.
5 is where you meet a certain group,
Right.
and 7 is huge. And so looking back in hindsight, they're like, well, that one doesn't stack up to those two, but it's still important. It's still a good book. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think my favorite thing about the Dresden Files, while Butcher puts an interesting, little bit of a unique twist to all of the different types of supernatural characters and groups that we meet,
Hmm.
I love while Harry Dresden says, God and I don't see eye to eye.
Hmm.
Okay, so he doesn't practice faith, but he understands and sees the power of a character, a Knight of the Cross,
Right.
the faith, that character, the power of that character's faith. Just
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. Like I'm huge into reading about religion and
Yeah.
characters' cultural. I like when an author gives me a culture. I like their beliefs, how they perform their religion, just how they. God, I just get into that stuff,
Right,
and
right,
so
right.
I've always really enjoyed that aspect. I just I love nuance, I guess.
Yeah, one of the relationships I love so far in Dresden Files is that between, without getting into spoilers, but is between Harry and Michael Carpenter. Uh,
Yes.
it's such a beautiful thing.
Oh,
They're such different people, but they each appreciate the other, and I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's a
mhm,
great touch on Jim Butcher's part. That
mhm.
relationship brings a lot of the characters out. I loved Michael the moment I met him,
Yes.
and I'm probably more like Harry in some ways than I am like Michael, but
Same.
I loved the guy. I loved the guy
Yeah.
as I met him. So
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. And it just shows that, like, Michael just lives his faith. He does
yeah,
not
yeah,
try to force Harry into it. He does
right.
not try to be overbearing or convert Harry.
Yeah.
But Harry knows if he ever wants to talk to Michael about it or Father Fort Hill, the door
Yeah.
is open
Yeah.
and they still love him. And I'm like, why can't people, like, why is it only fictional characters that seem to be able to have different beliefs or ways of looking at things and still get along
Yeah.
and just have each other's backs? Like,
Yeah.
I just loved it.
Again, it's like, why can't I like Stormlight Archive and Malazan?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? So I think that's a great attitude. But so well, fantastic. So we didn't finish yet. I think we got distracted a little
I'm
bit there.
sorry.
Oh
That's
no,
just
it was.
me. That's just me. I chase rabbits.
Oh, it's great. I love it. So where else do we want to talk about your reading journey? Any other big
Oh
reads? So I
gosh.
think we've gotten to almost like your teen years at least, right?
Yeah.
Time.
So I'm trying to remember what all I read back in those days.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
My word, because I wore out the library. The best thing my dad ever did for me was take me and get me a library card. He would take me every 2 weeks, and
Oh,
that I would check out as many books as they would allow me
stack of
to.
books. Yeah.
And I just would read everything. I remember I read Gone with the Wind for
Hmm.
fun.
Hmm.
Oh gosh. Man, I've read. I mean, I would read whatever I could get my hands on. I loved the Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer. I liked her sci-fi book, The Host, that was supposed to be a trilogy.
Hmm.
Way better than the vampire one.
Interesting.
Gosh, of course, Harry Potter, got into those. Man, and then I'm a big rereader. So I also constantly just reread the books in my library. I mean, I've reread Nancy Drew, all the Hardy Boys. Gosh,
Okay.
the Babysitter's Club. I read all of those as a kid, and
Yeah.
I try to revisit those. Mm-mm. Those don't hold up over time.
Yeah.
I went through a phase where I went back through and read all of the original Nancy Drew books.
Oh wow. Okay.
And man, I just got into Dresden, read all of those. I just I just would read anything. It's
Yeah.
hard to remember that journey of what came when and where.
Yeah.
Oh man. A lot of, I when we moved here, I had a huge collection of romance novels that I got rid of.
Uh-huh.
I worked for Lifeway Christian Bookstore for 4 years,
Okay.
and I got
Lucky.
books at a discount. So I
Uh-oh.
have a ton of Christian fiction, just
Uh-huh.
thrillers, mystery, love stories. But a lot of people, you know, they're like, "Oh, well, you have, that's those are Christian books." I'm like, "No, they're just Christian fiction because the authors were Christian and they just wrote according to their values."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I don't care. Like I will read anything. I don't need to know what your political beliefs are. I don't need to know what your religious beliefs are.
Huh.
What happens is I either see your book cover and it grabs me,
Hmm.
or I pick it up, I'll look at the back of the book, and I'm like, I will have a phrase that just pops out at me, and I'm like, okay, I'm in for that. So,
Okay. Wow.
but I don't think I've read one singular book that changed my life in any type of way, because I've always been a reader. And when I was younger, my backpack had 2 to 3 books at all time, because I never wanted to be without a spare. If I finished one, I
Yeah.
needed to have the next one ready to go. So I mean, gosh, my purse in high school and college was big enough to carry
Huh.
whatever book I was reading.
Oh, well, you mentioned Stephen King a few times,
Mm.
and I am someone who has not read any Stephen King outside of the Dark Tower series, but I've read the Dark Tower series,
Oh my gosh.
which I loved. I've put it in my top 10 fantasy series of all time because I loved it so
Brilliant.
much. And I don't have a lot of people, a lot of King super fan, constant readers, as they're called,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Wanted me to read, oh, you have to read The Stand, or you have to read, the vampire one, Salem's Lot. You have to read,
Oh, it's so good.
before you can read this Dark Tower book, you have to read these 3 different other Stephen King books. And I was like, you know what? I just want to read Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the advice, but
Mhm.
I just want to read Dark Tower, and I will eventually maybe read some of those others because I really did enjoy Dark Tower tremendously. And I
Oh, it
don't
was
think you
beautiful.
have to have read those other books to love the Dark Tower.
No, no. The Stand, literally there's 2 or 3 lines
Uh-huh.
that someone who has read The Stand is going to go, "Oh, I know what that's from."
Yeah.
Now, Salem's Lot does have a bigger tie-in. In my opinion, the tie-in was boring. That particular
Interesting.
tie-in, and
Well,
the
and
and the
also
Dark Tower was boring. Now, I love
right.
Salem's Lot, the book. Like,
Okay. Okay.
the slow, drawn out fear, suspense, and dread. But what Stephen King does that is just brilliant. It is genius. There are not a lot of authors that can do this.
Hmm.
Stephen King can write about a town, and he
Hmm.
introduces you to every person in that town. You know who they're related to, who they're married to, how many kids they have, their names, what they do in school, what time they go to work, where they work. You know everything about them. And so when stuff starts happening, you are so emotionally invested. You feel that this is your community that you're reading about. You are
Yeah.
attached to these people. And
Yeah.
when things start happening, or you think something might happen, the emotional investment that you have, that he is able to create with his reader, is
Yeah.
just unmatched. I call it him. He's just able to write small town USA.
Yeah.
And Salem's Lot is just a beautiful
Okay.
example of that. I think it's so good because of how he just gets you connected to that town of Salem's Lot.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And of course, I felt like probably reading Wolves of the Kala spoiled me for a lot of Salem's Lot, I would guess, because it feels like there's a lot of
Mm.
recapping of Salem's Lot in Wolves of the Kala.
Yeah, but
Um,
it wasn't done well.
okay.
Like, I did not care. I really thought that should have been greatly reduced in Wolves of the
It
Kala.
went on a little long for me, honestly. And Wolves of
It
the Kala
it
might
did.
be my least favorite of the Dark Tower series.
Well, what happened there with me, and as I knew that, I was like, okay, I know Salem's Lot story. Maybe that's part of it. But he made the story about the wolves so interesting that I was just constantly going, when are we, going to get back to the wolves?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was interested in. And I was like, oh my goodness, well, maybe we're going to get something interesting about Salem's Lot, because a lot of that happens after Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
But after I finished that book, I was like, yeah, it's definitely my least favorite of the Dark
Of the
Tower
series.
books.
So you're not one of those individuals who doesn't like books 6 and 7, Song of Susanna,
Oh,
Dark
I
Tower.
loved
I
Song of
love them both.
Susanna.
I love them both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the ending. I thought the
Same.
ending was just a stroke of brilliance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just I wanted to immediately go back and reread the series, just knowing how it ended.
Yeah.
I mean, I have chill bumps because that was just beautifully crafted.
And it choked me up several times. The
Yeah.
Dark
Oh, I
Tower.
cried
Yeah.
almost the whole time through the seventh book. I
Yep.
was bawling. I was either crying because I was just kind of preemptively sad that it was going to be over. And
Yeah.
I was trying to make myself slow down to just savor these characters because I
Yeah.
would say the quartet is my favorite group of characters.
Mm.
Honestly, friend group, found family, they're my favorite. I
Wow.
would love to have just that kind of close knit, just that kind of family, that kind of love. And man, I to avoid spoilers, there was a scene with Roland
Uh-huh.
and a second loss of a particular something.
Yes. I know
And
what
it
you're
was the
talking about.
description. Yeah, it wasn't so much the loss, it was the description of Roland
Yeah.
dealing with it
Yeah.
that broke me. I was crying so hard. Philip, I'm telling you, I'm holding the book up to read it and like opening my eyes really wide so the tears could just fall out faster
Oh
without
no.
interrupting so I could keep reading.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was traumatic. It was beautiful. That was probably one of the most realistic, authentic, just grief.
Yeah.
Ah, but
Yeah. Yeah, I was
it was
bawling through the seventh book. I loved Song of Susanna as well, and what Stephen King did there. Another favorite is Wizard and Glass.
that is my ultimate favorite.
Okay, yeah,
Oh
it's
my
so
god.
beautiful and so traumatic and everything all at once. And it is the book that humanized Roland for me. I mean, I thought of
Same.
him previously. I was like, he's an iconic, cool character, but
I
somebody who's
never
the
trusted him.
remote. I don't trust him. He's obsessed and
Mhm.
possibly even slightly evil because of that obsession. And
Yep.
he's, shady and all of that. And that book just humanized him and made me feel so connected with him. And then from there
Mhm.
on out, it was him and the quartet, and all of that was just brought to its full fruition in the seventh book, for the
Yeah,
full
that
emotional
is
impact.
definitely a top favorite fantasy series
Yeah.
by Stephen King. That's why I was so excited for Fairy Tale and I just didn't get it. I The first 200 pages was everything I love about King.
Yeah.
Just the relationship with those three was beautiful. And then it just kind of lost me. I'm like, it was too I kept feeling like I was reading just too much of an aftertaste of a well-known fairy tale, all of the fairy tales. And I just
Okay.
felt that there wasn't anything original about it.
Huh.
And I was like, I know you can do better. I know what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And because I know what he's capable of and how many books he's written that I loved and are some of my favorites,
Hmm.
I was a little let down. So
Oh, I haven't
yeah,
read it yet.
oh gosh. I don't even know where I would tell you to start.
Yeah.
Just
Well, I do want to read Salem's Lot. I do want to read The Stand, and I was thinking about the Eyes of the Dragon. Is that the other one that is sort of fantasy? It is fantasy, right? By Stephen King.
I have not read that one.
Okay. Okay. That
I've
he wrote
I've
for his daughter or something, I
mhm,
think, or
mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I haven't read it, but I've heard about it. So I like fantasy, so I want to read his
Yeah.
fantasy stuff. But and of course, Dark Towers. So yeah, it's sort of kind of fantasy, but it's also horror and science fiction,
Sci-fi.
and
Yeah.
dystopian future, and just whatever he felt like doing, which is something
Yeah.
I ended up loving. Where's he going in the next book? Who knows?
Mhm.
I actually really enjoyed that aspect of it, that he would just go for it. I even loved the meta stuff that he started doing in Wolves of the Kala, and that I think where he lost a lot of fans probably, but I was like, yeah, I'm here for this, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was eating it up. I was wrapped around that little finger by that point.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Well, we
those
definitely agree on Dark Tower
stories.
then. And so you
Mhm.
did finish Malazan Book of the Fallen? Is it, do I have that?
I have not finished.
Oh, okay.
I
Oh,
have not finished. I picked up Gardens of the Moon in the middle of 20,000 other things I had going on.
uh-huh.
And because I want to give that one the attention that I want to give it. It's not anything I don't, I don't have to be in any kind of headspace. I know that that is a puzzle that I want to work out, and I
Mm,
didn't take good enough notes the first time on the different characters,
okay.
and I want to have fun trying to puzzle this series out and their characters and their arcs, because I love those characters so much.
Yeah.
And so I want to reread that one, and I want to
Okay.
start that over. So I am currently in the middle of rereading like Wheel of Time this year. I've got
Okay.
Dresden I'm going with. And then I saw the announcement that the Broken Binding is going to be doing a release of Malazan. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, because I've been trying to collect all the trades. I thought, well, that's an excellent opportunity
Yeah.
to get those books and perhaps just start reading them as they come in. So
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna wait and see more on the announcement for that. But
Oh,
I
yeah, we are very
absolutely,
interested in this announcement. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely going to come back to that one and finish it. I know I'm gonna want to do a deep dive, and I always get tickled when people the whole there's a bunch of discourse about, oh, you need to reread it to be able to understand it better and all that. Like I don't buy into that.
Hmm.
But I am a serial rereader. So to me that says this is fantastic, because this means I'm going to be able to read this book
Yeah.
20 times and still love it.
Yeah.
I mean, here I
Yeah.
am rereading The Wheel of Time. I don't know I think the seventh or eighth time since
Wow.
I've had it. So yeah,
Wow.
I
Okay.
I love, like, I don't just buy books to let them sit there and look pretty. I actively reread these books. I've probably a third of the books I've read this year have been rereads. There are some that I
Great.
just like to reread every year. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston.
Uh-huh.
That
Uh-huh.
is just a beautiful, beautiful piece. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
That book is a book that everybody, every reader, every person, you don't even have to be a reader. If you just decide you want to pick up a book,
Hmm.
that book, even though it is so old, it's one of those that's timeless. You can take it, you can
Yeah.
apply it. If you're somebody who highlights quotes or a meaningful passage, I would just tell you, say just you're going to start highlighting on page 1 with the first sentence, and you're going to be highlighting all the way through to the last sentence. It
Hmm.
is just a beautiful,
Wow.
beautiful book. So
Wow, good for you being able to do that. One of the sad things, one of the few downsides so far, and it's not my own fault really, but one of the few downsides to having a channel has been I very rarely reread these days. I used to do a lot of rereads. I would read Lord of the Rings every year,
mhm.
when I was younger, and I haven't done a reread except for Malazan, the Malazan Book of the Fallen since I started the channel. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I haven't done nearly as much rereading because I'm constantly trying to catch up with. Oh, I gotta read this series. I gotta read this new series. I gotta. Oh, wait, that old series that I never read. And so it's just like so many gaps that I'm trying to fill.
Yeah.
And I think I like your approach better, which is
Well, but see, now our situations are different.
yeah.
I don't have a full-time job. We moved here. My husband got a job that makes more than we ever did combined previously. We're
Wow.
debt free. We have a budget. We stick to it. And so
Smart.
I have a channel, I get all of that done, and then I have a ton of time that I'm able to spend reading. So I have time to do review reads for authors who ask, for arcs.
Yeah.
I reread, and then I read new stuff. So that's why I read so much every month
Wow.
as it is now. because I am very fortunate to have the luxury of time to do so. And it's
Yeah.
hilarious because now that my husband's into audiobooks, it'll be funny because he's like, well, I'm going to sit down here and listen to my audiobook. He's like,
Uh-huh.
I've got
Uh-huh.
30 minutes left. And I'm like, no problem, babe. Take your time. Yeah. So,
Well, you just
but we
made,
also
oh,
go
sorry. I
ahead.
was just saying, you just made me and probably everybody listening to this jealous by describing how much time you have to read. Uh,
Yeah. And I'm also one of those that I've just always been really into time management. Like every time I ever got a new
yes.
job, once I learned it, the first thing I did was learn how I could, make it better, do things faster.
Yeah.
And I do that now. So I'm so weird. I will, like with Little Time, I have the physical book. And if I'm cooking, cleaning, which my house has never been so clean because of audiobooks,
Uh-huh.
go for a run. I'll have the audiobook going and then I'll sit and read. And late at night, then I'll have checked the book out from my library. I'll be reading it on my Kindle in bed.
Hmm.
So, and when we go do stuff, if we're sitting somewhere, if Chris wants to read something on Reddit on his phone while we're waiting, I've
Yeah.
got my Kindle out.
Yeah.
So it's, but we also, he and I have designated time, like generally on it's Friday evenings through Sunday. That's Lezlie Chris time. Where,
Yeah.
but I told him, I was like, oh, but I'm gonna film with Philip this weekend. He's like, no worries. He's working on this project with his
Okay.
toolbox. He's like,
Good.
put all this foam in it, and he's like cutting out the shapes of the tools and stuff that he can just pop in. It's
Oh,
very detailed. And so he's like, oh, I'll go work on that. I'm like, fantastic.
good. I'm glad I'm not interrupting the important weekend.
No, he knows I'd be sitting down there watching the NBA playoffs anyway.
Okay. Well, I have so much respect for that, Leslie. I really do. I think there's a lot of wisdom in your approach to life and the idea that you would live within your means to pursue the things that are really meaningful to you. That is
Mhm.
just beautiful. And I feel like so few people do that. And it's a shame. I have a good friend I play tennis with who retired when he was 39 because he made enough money. Yeah. I mean, he
That's
was on Wall Street, made a ton of
yeah.
money and said, all right, this is enough. Now, if I
Mhm.
live within a certain budget for the rest of my life, I can do whatever I want with
Mhm.
my time. So he did that when he was 39 years old. And he plays tennis, he travels, he does whatever, he reads all the time. Really
Mhm.
smart guy. And that's how he lives. And I have so much respect for that. I just think that's a great, I mean, most people keep thinking, oh, I got to get, a bigger house. So most people who
Oh
work at Wall
man.
Street, it's like this vicious cycle,
Yeah.
well, I got to get a bigger boat now because my boat's out of fashion or I got to get a bigger house with a
Mm-mm.
swimming pool out back that I never use because I'm working all the time. You know,
Shoot.
and it's just,
I'm like, if it's not broke, don't
yeah,
like Chris will get new car itis every once in a while. And I'm like,
yeah,
we have two paid for vehicles. We've got a 2007 Lexus that we had since the had 13 miles on the car and we got that one. Got a 2015 Jeep Cherokee. They
yep,
look great. They run great. We've taken really good care of them. They're
yeah,
paid for.
yep,
And I'm like, we don't need a new car.
nope.
So now we are saving to buy a house, and real estate here is extremely expensive. And of course, the mortgage
Oh,
rates
near
are,
Orlando. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, they're insane. So we're going to wait for the rates to come down, and we
yeah,
want to be able to put down enough money to not have to worry about PMI.
right.
So yeah, we're in a townhouse right now. Do I like it? No, I am not a fan of townhouses.
No,
But
okay.
is it a roof over our heads? Are we right near all of the things that we like to do? Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's largely due to I moved out when I was 20 and I
Uh-huh.
worked two jobs for gosh, probably 8 years. And I was on a very tight budget
Yeah.
and I just taught Chris that and I got him on a budget. And when he started seeing, oh, I'm spending $300 a month on coffee,
Yeah.
because we worked at the state hospital in Mississippi, and there was a coffee shop in there, and he would just go over there and get a coffee 2 or 3 times a day.
That'll add
And when
up.
you start seeing
Yeah.
where your money is going and how much, and just learning the art of meal prep and
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
your own coffee to work and things like that. And
Yep.
once he started learning how much money he could save by not doing that,
Mm-hmm.
he was hooked after that. And then the trick to make a budget work is budget enough fun money for you to have fun. Because if
Yeah.
you don't, that's where you're gonna start robbing yourself. And
Okay.
we do that. Like as long as I have enough money to buy like just a few books and
Okay. I
some
was gonna say,
stickers.
what about books?
And well, actually, it's usually like maybe like a couple books and then some
Okay.
stickers for my little journal because I love to journal,
Uh-huh.
and I'm happy. So,
You're a library user too. You mentioned the library earlier.
oh man, yes, I for every book, I usually will hit up my library to get the audiobook and the ebook so that
Okay.
I'm covered, because there's nothing worse than to be able to want to read your book and you need a certain medium to do it, and you can't. Like we went, we went to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 last night. We went to see Return of the Jedi for its 40th anniversary
Oh,
last
cool.
week.
Cool.
And we got there early and there's 30 minutes. Okay, well, most people are playing on their phones. I'm sitting over there with my Kindle, just
Ah,
going to town, getting in a couple of chapters.
nice.
So
Nice. Nice.
I would rather read than do anything else.
I would too. Yeah. Unless it's right in my case.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I have fun with it. It's really a lot of fun. Unfortunately, though, you're right. I mean, earlier you were talking about how one thing that you do, a lot of authors do talk about it. You do give up reading time when you write. I mean, you're using similar parts of your brain, I suppose. And so, and there are some authors, even like I think Joe Abercrombie, for example, who has said very publicly, "Yeah, I don't read a lot of fantasy anymore because I'm trying to write my own fantasy, and it's a matter of time." And I find that sad almost, like because I'm a fan of the genre, and I don't
Yeah.
ever want to be in a place where I feel like I don't have time to read it, because one of the reasons I wanted to write it was because I'm inspired by what I read. So it's a little sad to me. I hope Abercrombie gets to read some fantasy every now and again in
Mhm.
between, books that he's writing,
Well,
but
I think it would just involve, I can understand perhaps maybe not reading fantasy while you're writing fantasy. I could
mhm.
see where that might would kind of muddy the waters a bit. But, you know, because you've got your trilogy finished, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wrote it. I mean, it's been the story's been done for
Yeah.
a long time, and I've spent the last few years more just revising and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. So yeah,
Probably if it were me, once I got that trilogy done, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna take some time off and spend reading. But I think what happens is, like probably with Joe Abercrombie, you write that hit trilogy and publishers are throwing money at you saying, what can you get me next?
yeah,
And I think it's just easy to get caught up in that. And then you
sure,
have all these ideas and you want to get them on paper.
yeah,
I feel that I would, because I get really attached to something and I am one track minded on that until, and I mean, I'm like that with a lot of books. If it's a book that really hits me, normally I'm reading like 4 or 5 things at a time. But if
yeah.
one really
Wow.
catches me, I cannot focus, think about anything else until I finish that one.
Okay, that's
And so
interesting.
I bet if I ever decided, oh, I'm going to try to write something,
Yeah,
that would consume my every waking thought. That's all I
yeah.
would want to do.
How interesting. Yeah. So you are capable though of reading multiple books at a time, because I'm
Yes.
terrible at that. I
Well, I have a
prefer.
trick.
I prefer not to. I switch between series. I'm
Mhm.
usually involved in 10 different series at a time, and I like being able to like we said before, go from Malazan to Dresden Files, and feel refreshed for going
Mhm.
back to whatever after doing 3 or 4 different things. I like that, but I cannot read several different books simultaneously. Usually I don't like to do that. Right now
I
I'm
think
doing
of it,
two, but
yeah, I think of it as changing classes.
uh-huh.
So I'll
Okay.
wake up and I usually like to read a short story because
Yeah.
that's something I can just kind of get an accomplished feel for first thing in the morning. It's like, yeah, I started something and finished it.
Good for you.
What's
You have a
next?
routine there, don't you?
I
Wow.
do. I am a creature of habit. You can set your watch by me. And then I usually have an audiobook going. And hopefully, if all works out, it's also one of the physical books that I'm reading. So, you know, making lunch, cleaning up, doing whatever I've got. Because I'm like scheduled. I have like Monday through Friday, I've got a different cleaning chore assigned to that day. So I don't spend,
Wow.
I don't want to spend half a day on Saturday cleaning house. I hate cleaning house, but when I spread it up to just one or two things each day,
Smart.
it doesn't take long. It
Yeah. Yeah.
feels like it doesn't take long, and I do a better job because I'm not looking for shortcuts to like get done
Wow.
cleaning. But if I have an audiobook, I don't care. I'm happy. And then I usually sit down to physically read, and I just pick a different genre. Like
Okay.
I'm reading Dracula right now because I signed up for, it's called Dracula Daily.
Oh,
And it's a journal by Jonathan Harker, and the first entry is May the 3rd. So on May the 3rd, they emailed me that entry. And then on May the 4th, I got his journal entry to read. So I'm reading Dracula through emails,
okay.
and that's kind of a fun way to read a book. I've got a dark fantasy going, and then of course I got Wheel of Time, but I've read that so many times, like there's no mixing that up with anything else.
Yeah.
And then I have
Yeah.
a horror short story collection I'm working through.
My
But
goodness.
it's different
Wow.
times of the day. So it's like my brain changes gear. And then I always have a journal that I take notes about all of the different books that I'm reading. So
Man, you are organized. That I'm sure that that helps you in so many ways. Not least running a BookTube channel. I'm sure that that comes in handy as well, being so
it's
organized with
fun.
that. So are you somebody who you must do a good job sticking to TBRs, I'm guessing. Is that true? Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You're in the minority on BookTube, I think.
Yeah,
I'm
now I may
definitely
add
terrible.
to, but I well, so I have a formula for that too. So
Okay.
I usually have a publisher arc that's for review. I always have at least one self-pub book that I've accepted for review. I'm currently going through the self-published science fiction competition. We just got our last round of books. I'm about to get into SPFBO, which you're going to be involved in this year, right?
That's right. I'm going to be a judge for SPFBO
You're
this
gonna
year.
love it. It's
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly excited. And I have a little secret project that I'm gonna be doing
Ooh.
for that connected to it.
Oh,
So
how cool.
I'm
How
looking forward
cool.
to it. I oh gosh, I have a little author series that I'm gonna kick off on the 16th. I'm gonna see how
Wow.
that goes. It's a sort
Tell
of
can you tell what can you tell me about that? That sounds really
um
interesting.
so you've probably seen a booktuber do the try a chapter challenge where
Okay.
they'll get maybe 5 books and they'll read the first chapter of each one and decide which one they want to read to completion.
Gotcha.
So think try a chapter combined with, instead of say yes to the dress, it would be say yes to the book.
Okay.
I am someone who really enjoys when an author will do a reading of their book.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to have an author come on the channel and read the first chapter of their book
Oh, wow.
and just
Cool.
kind of get a feel for, because I'm also one of those readers where I need you to grab me in that first chapter. I need a
Uh-huh.
taste test, just a little taste test of what I can expect, what I can look forward to.
Hmm.
And you can generally get an idea for the author's writing style as well. And
Yeah.
I'll just love when authors read their stuff because they're going to put emotional emphasis on on where they how they wrote it.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be fun and just kind of be a, all right, if people are in the chat that were maybe thinking about picking up the book or they're intrigued by the book, can hear the first chapter and be like, how do you feel? Or just have any questions.
Yeah.
So, or just kind of talk about, because I'm somebody that when I read the first chapter, I'm like, okay, here's some questions I have to see how that's gonna come out. Like, oh, well, I like how this character is written. And so I thought that might be a fun way to promote a book for
Yeah.
one,
It's a
and
great
just
idea. Yeah.
see, because I know they used to do that with bookstores. Authors would come and
Yep.
do like little tours where they would read some of their books. So I
Yep.
thought that might be fun. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna have the first one on May the 16th.
Oh, wow. So I wish you the best with that. I think it's a wonderful idea. I hope it goes really,
Yeah.
really well. Yeah.
I think it's gonna be fun. It's really hilarious because the first author is a friend of mine, and
Huh?
I knew he would probably say yes and be up for it. And we got to talking about it. He's like, "Oh man, my first chapter. He in this particular story, one of
Uh-oh.
the characters has a stutter,
Uh-huh.
and he's like,
Okay.
oh my gosh." I'm like, "That this is gonna be fantastic."
Well,
Like, yeah, just be thinking about your future audiobook narrator.
yes, yeah, I guess that's a good way to create some empathy with the audiobook narrator. Is that's so funny. Wow. Yeah, I'm really lucky that Alan is going to be my audiobook
Mm-hmm.
narrator. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
excited for his narration. It's going to be, I think he's going to be just brilliant. And I think we all recognize how talented he is. So I think he's going to be just awesome at this. And I
Mm-hmm.
suspect, if he wants to go somewhere with it, he probably could,
Yeah, I heard he was going to be trying to catch up with Kevin Kemp, get some pointers, which I love Kevin Kemp. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
he's
he's going to be so good, I think. Yeah, and I think he's going to take it very, very seriously as well. Because, I think he'll be, you never
he's
know
going to
what it
be
can turn
like
into.
James Marsters.
Yeah.
James Marsters acts with his voice.
Yes. Yes.
Just
Yeah.
and I think Alan's going to be I think that's going to be the caliber of narrator he's going to be.
I think so. I think so
Mm-hmm.
too. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see. There are certain voices I know in the story that he's going to be so perfect for, and he has a range of different voices
Yeah.
he can
Oh
do.
yeah.
And then there are certain voices that he's going to have to be a little more serious with. But I think there's
He'll
room
nail it.
there's room for him to have fun, which is
Oh
gonna
yeah.
yeah, yeah, which I'm happy about. So
Yeah. We're all very, very, very much looking forward to it.
yeah, yeah, it's exciting to think that he's going to be narrating that, and hopefully he'll have fun with it too. I know he's a little bit scared at the same time, because it's something, I think it's something he's kind of wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and so I can understand why it would be a little scary too. But I know he's going to do a
Well,
good job.
just tell him it's like, well, I wrote this. I mean,
Yeah.
that's scary. How
Yeah.
how did you feel when you were like, okay, so I've created this BookTube channel. I have this community. I review books.
Yeah.
How did that make like I would have been paralyzed with fear to then say, okay, well, I've spent all these years reviewing fantasy books.
Yeah.
Here is my baby to put out into the world
Yeah.
to see what your friends, your mutuals are going to say about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I probably should have been more scared than I was.
No,
But
if you weren't, that's fantastic.
I mean, it sounds like it would be something like, I don't know, walking outside with no clothes on or something, because you're just sort of exposed to the world here. And you are, in a way. I mean, you've poured yourself into this story, and
I would have wimped out. I would have published under a pen name and then
yeah.
reviewed my own work. Like, wow, I
Wow,
read
this
this
author
book.
is brilliant. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
gosh.
It's been fun, actually. I would say that it's been really fun to hear people's reactions and very gratifying. I've loved the conversation. I was with, I've done a few talks
Mhm,
already
mhm.
with Ed and Will over at the Brothers
Yeah.
Quinn,
Oh, they're
and the one
wonderful.
that Joanna hosted with
Mhm.
Murphy and Alan and Jimmy. And we had more fun in that conversation than I can possibly describe to you. It was a blast. It was like hanging out with friends. And
And it's caught on video forever.
yeah,
You'll
yeah.
never lose that memory. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. And Alan, did some funny voices, which, he's,
Yep.
he threatened to
Typical
use,
Alan.
some rather unflattering, funny voices for some of my characters.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a ton of fun. So, yeah, this has been a blast. I feel very fortunate and blessed to be part of this community at this moment in my life, because I did work on this for 18 plus years, mostly in the summers because I teach during the semesters and all that. So,
Mhm.
um, but to be able to share this with people that I know on this platform, with friends and everything else, it's been so meaningful and so moving. When its funniest moment was maybe when I put out the video just announcing that I'm going to be publishing the trilogy this year. And that was
I bet you could collectively just hear everybody going, oh, because
yeah.
I mean, we were all furiously messaging each other, like, oh my God, did you see Phillips? Did you see his
Uh,
announcement?
it was crazy.
It set the world on fire.
I read those, and that, that's not breaking the internet or anything, that video, but what really I found so moving was the messages of support that I got when
Well,
I made that
it's
video. It was so, I was
it's
in
like we're
tears.
coworkers.
Yeah,
It's we're
yeah,
coworkers,
yeah,
and books are what we love. We love to review books, and
yeah.
when one of us does something, like you're providing for us,
I
you're
hope
giving
so.
us
Yeah,
more content, and it's from somebody that we know, like
yeah,
that just makes it completely different, and you cannot help but want success. I feel that all of us, when Daniel Green put out his first novella,
yeah,
that was what everybody, it didn't matter if
yeah,
you're a romance channel, you're a mystery channel, you're a thriller channel, you're a booktuber, he's a booktuber, and you see him put out a book. Like that,
yeah,
that's just kind of how it felt. It's like one of us is succeeding at doing something that we love. So
yeah,
we
yeah,
cannot help but want you to do wonderful at it. So
yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, and people like him are, anyway, he's not the first booktuber to put out a book by any means, but I do feel like, in a
he
way.
came to mind because I saw the cover for the new one.
Oh, okay, cool.
Neon Ghost looks amazing.
Cool. Good. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I don't know if trailblazer is the right word for it, but I mean, he has shown that, yes, we can do this. And I think that is fantastic. And, I'm really happy that I was asked to write a foreword for an anthology of fantasy short stories written by booktubers. And so, yeah, this is something that,
I didn't hear about that.
yeah, so Jeremy Fee, I don't know, do you know Jeremy?
Yes, I
Yep.
do.
So he's the editor, and I think he's contributing a story as well. But it's called
Wait, I think I did.
Half Human Heroes. Half Human
Yes.
is what it's called. Yeah. So Half Human
That's
Heroes is the name of the collection. It's coming out on May 15.
mhm.
And I was so moved that he would ask me to write the foreword for it. And I accepted. And so I wrote a foreword, and I talk a lot about our community in that foreword, which is so very special to all of us. But it's really cool that all these different voices from our community have contributed to this effort. And by the way, the profits from it are going to charity as well. So you can feel good
Awesome.
about buying this book.
Yeah.
But lots of people that we know have stories in this, and I'm not going to name them because I will forget half of them. But you can find it on. It's on Goodreads already.
Mhm.
You can look at it on Goodreads. It's called Half Human Heroes, and Jeremy's the editor. But it's a really great group of people who've contributed stories, and I'm sure that we're going to have a chance to talk about those stories in the future. So you'll have some stories for your short story period of the
Yeah.
day.
Did you ever think as a young reader that you would ever find yourself in this position where you can talk to these authors you've been reading for years? You're asked to write a foreword. You write your own book and put it out, your trilogy that
Yeah,
you're going to put out into the world, and
no.
writing forewords for anthologies. Like I opened a book yesterday that I got from Angry Robot. I was fortunate to receive the arc for Stephen Arion's The Judas Blossom earlier
Mm.
this year,
Hmm.
and they asked me if I would like to blurb it.
Oh, how
And
cool.
I knew I was going to get a physical copy. Well, the agent told me, she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to get you a physical copy." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And they have a US distributor.
Mm.
And I can't remember, I was talking about it somewhere. She's like, "It's coming from the UK. It's going to take a while." And I thought, why is it coming from the UK? Why is it coming from the US? But I didn't really think much of it. And when I opened it yesterday, it was autographed by
Signed.
Stephen
Yeah.
Arion, and he personalized a message to me, and they printed my blurb inside. And
Oh, how cool.
I
How,
just burst into tears
yeah.
because it's like a favorite author who Steven's been on my channel, and I'm still kind of crazy. Like, and we chat all the time, and I'm like, and I mean, I get, to me, he's a celebrity. Now he
Yeah.
probably thinks he's just a guy who writes books.
He has a channel
But
now
to
too, by the way,
He
right?
does, he
He has
does.
a
He's
channel.
got a
Yeah.
great author channel,
Yeah.
and it's like we just chat like normal friends, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I get to read his books, and I mean this new historical fantasy trilogy, and I it's signed to me, and my name, I mean, my name is in this thing, and something I
Yeah.
said about it, and I'm just going, how is this my life?
That's so
It's
cool. That is so wonderful. Yeah, I know what you mean. I have had the incredible opportunity to chat with some of my literary heroes, like Stephen Erickson and Ian Esselmont and Mark Lawrence and Jenny Wirtz, and that it's amazing. And these are really warm, wonderful people who are like us. They love stories, they love books, and so it's a we're from the same tribe, I think, and so it's a natural, easy connection that forms between people like that. You can feel a little bit intimidating at first. I was really fortunate even to get a chance to meet Stephen Erickson in Florida, actually, near where you
Yeah,
live.
I know.
Yeah.
I was supposed to meet y'all for dinner, but that's when Chris broke his hip and he
Oh
was in
yeah,
surgery.
that's kind of a good
Yeah,
reason not to make dinner. Yeah.
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 I was crushed. I've
Yeah.
recently
Not as crushed
came
as he
across.
was, but yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was, when I was telling him that I was filming with you today, I was showing him your channel,
Yeah.
and I showed, there was the one that had the picture of all of y'all, and I was like, I was supposed to meet all of them. He's like, "Well, why didn't
Oh,
you?" I said, "You were in the hospital getting surgery." He's like, "Oh."
oopsies.
Sorry
Well, I'll
about
tell you
that.
what, we're gonna be there in 2024.
I
So
will too.
yeah, March 2024.
That's
So that'll be
awesome.
great. It would be so lovely to see you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was just so wonderful to be able to meet AP and Jimmy, and then Alan and Joanna came, and Steven Erickson was hanging out with us, and it was a moment of surreal, kind of like,
Mhm.
this is weird because I know you online, but I don't know you.
Mhm.
Alan was so funny when Jimmy and I had been there for a few days, and we were waiting for him in the lobby of the hotel. And when Alan showed up, he was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous." And it was so funny. And Jimmy and I were just like, "It's okay. It's weird at first, but then after like 5 minutes, it just feels like we've been hanging out
Yeah.
together."
He didn't even get the opportunity to be nervous the first time we met. I saw him first, recognized him first, and just walked up and started talking to him.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Because you met him, and you met a group of people in Florida too, didn't you?
Yeah, I've met up with Alan and Christina a few times,
Uh huh.
and the bookish mom Jessie lives
Jesse.
near. She's
Yeah.
about an hour away, And Evie came and visited,
Oh, how
not,
cool.
was it last year or year before? It was before Chris broke his hip.
Okay.
But yeah, I've actually got to meet quite a few booktubers because a
Yeah.
lot of them come to Disney World, and
Yeah.
I'll
You're in a
I'll
good
sneak
spot.
over.
Yeah.
I'll sneak over and go see them.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. I mean, it's just such a wonderful thing to be in this community. And the only downside is I can't watch all the videos I want to watch. I can't support
Right.
all the people I would love to be able to support, and just not enough time in my life to do that.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's impossible. I'm always looking for new channels to
Yeah.
watch.
Yep.
And all I do, and I'm probably subscribed to I think the last time I looked like 268.
Oh, you're ahead of me.
And
Yeah, I'm
I
over
just
200 now, but yeah.
yeah, I just scroll through and I do what everybody else does.
Yeah.
If it pulls me in, if it pulls my attention, I click on it and watch it. So
Yep.
I
Yep.
that's what I do. And now a
Yeah.
lot of times I'll after I read a book, I'll know a bunch of my friends covered it and I'll go back
Uh-huh.
and see because sometimes if they have a different view than I do, I can reference that in mine and say, I
Yeah.
felt this way,
Yeah.
but Andrew's Wizardly Reads read it and pulled this from it if you want to check that out. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, there are great ways for us to connect. And one of the reasons I do this is because of, I want to have a chance. My goal is to talk. Well, when I started, I was subscribed to slightly under 200 people, and now I'm over 200. So I'm trying to get to everybody on Dear Dr. Fantasy. So I have years of this ahead of me, which is nice.
and there will always be more joining.
Yes, yes, yeah. I was just reflecting on that the other day, thinking there's a great new crop of booktubers out there, and I've really, enjoyed these new voices. And my only regret, again, is I cannot, like, I'm subscribed to people whose I've never left a comment on their channel before, uh,
Yeah.
and I feel
Well,
bad about that.
don't feel bad.
Yeah,
It's I do that because sometimes if I finish an audiobook and I don't have an audiobook, I'll listen to booktubers while I'm
yeah,
doing stuff around the house. So I'm
yeah.
not sitting in front of my phone
But you can't
watching.
comment then. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then it moves on to the next one on the list. And
yeah,
then do I remember to go back and comment? No. And sometimes
yeah.
I literally have nothing of value to say. I
Sure.
don't want to be one of those people that says,
Yeah,
great review.
yeah, yeah,
I would much rather say something that adds to the conversation
yeah,
rather than, oh, let me leave an emoji.
yeah.
The value is for them, I watched their full video, and because I'm
Right,
slow, I
right.
did it on one speed. So at least their analytics in that regard's gonna be good.
Yeah. Yeah, I will almost always, if I click on a video, even if I stop listening because I'm engaged in some other work, I'm grading papers, whatever, I will let the video play to the end
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
know what it does to the whatever. I don't really know, but I think I
Yeah,
know. It's
yeah.
something about the
The
algorithm or whatever.
mystery.
I want to give people a full view, and rather
Yeah.
than, even if I tune out after 3 minutes, I still let it play to the end.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess up
Well,
somebody's algorithm.
what what I like to do is I'll also just kind of open up an extra screen. I'll scroll, and I'll pick somebody's channel and I'll just click play all and put it on
Uh-huh.
mute and
Uh-huh.
just let it roll.
Yep.
So,
Yep. 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 I mean, we support each other in
mhm.
sometimes more subtle ways, I guess. But it's just not impossible. It's just not possible for us to. Unfortunately, there's so many wonderful people around
I
here.
know, I
It's a
know.
good problem, I guess. It's like having too many books to read. So
Yep.
yeah,
But
but
on
but
days that I'm sick, like I can't read because if I have a headache or something,
uh-huh.
then I'll do some serious binging because I'm just
Yeah,
laying on the couch or laying in the bed, and all I want to do is kind of mindlessly watch TV.
BookTube
And
binging.
I will booktube for just the entire day.
Wow. Yeah. I have I have certain times a day when I can do it. Like
Mhm,
mornings, usually when I'm
mhm.
getting stuff ready, from having breakfast, whatever. That's a prime BookTube
Yep.
viewing time for me is mornings. And I tend to be better at catching people who release in the morning, as opposed,
Mhm.
there are some people, I don't know why, but they release at, like late at night or something. And
Yeah.
those
I
I
don't know.
sometimes won't see in my feed because I tend to be more active in the morning.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah. Uh, anyway.
Yeah. It's rough. There's so much you want to do in a day.
Yep, yep. And I'm trying to run my own channel, and I have a full-time job, and I have a family, and I'm trying to write
Yep.
books and occasionally play tennis. So yeah.
Yep. You
But
gotta get it in while you can.
yes, yes, indeed. Well, Lezlie, this has been so much fun. I'm really glad we had a chance to reconnect here and chat. And you are someone I admire very deeply, and I think you do a
Shucks.
wonderful job with your channel, and you bring a beautiful attitude and presence to our community. So I want to thank you for that. This has been
That's the
wonderful.
goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the goal. And to get people reading more books. Well,
Yes.
I like to find books that maybe aren't widely known about and just sneak those out. So
I like
that's
that.
I think that's why I'm into self-published so much.
Sure.
Is
Yeah.
there's so much goodness there that's just not shared about as much because I mean those authors have to do everything themselves
Oh, I know.
and
Yeah.
so sometimes it's not nobody knows about it, but it's like one of my favorite books last year, probably more than one of my favorites. And I'm reading another, it's a self-published series by Joseph Sale.
Uh-huh.
That is that's his Dark Tower series for me.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's insane. I've got one left.
Oh, cool.
I
Huh.
almost don't want to read it. I don't want it to be over, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I know that
also
feeling.
need to know I need to know how it ends. But I think it's going to be another series I'm going to be ranking up there next to the Dark Tower series. So I'm excited about that. Which
Wow.
it's funny because I've got some other authors that have started reading that series from watching my videos, and we're just chatting about it privately in messages. And it's like, I know you're writing a series. I gotta read the series first. So
Uh,
that's kind of fun.
yeah, that is so cool. It's so many ways that we connect with each other. And
Yeah, it's beautiful.
bonding over stories. It's wonderful. So, well, thank
Well,
you so
thank you for
much.
having me. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. This was great. And everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you are not yet subscribed to Leslie's channel, The Nerdy Narrative, click on that link in the description and go check it out for lots of really great, insightful content and a wonderful, positive personality and lots of eclectic
Shucks.
stuff there. So, all right, everybody, thank you for watching, and till next time.
Bye.